Hey guys, welcome back. Now today's video we're going back to the basics and I'm going to be showing you really essential eyeshadow techniques in order to create a very simple and classic eyeshadow look. Now of course there are so many different eyeshadow looks out there, but I really feel like knowing how to do the basic smoky eye is probably the foundation to all of those other looks. I really just break it down so it's easy to understand, and hopefully by the end of this tutorial you'll really be able to master the smoky eye. Just remember that you could always switch up the colors. You could do something darker, you could do something lighter, you could do cool tone, warm tone, neutral. It really doesn't matter. Today's video is really just all about the technique. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and of course subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and let's get right into it. So the foundation for a good eye look is always going to be a primer. Primer is basically just going to help your eyeshadow just stay on throughout the whole entire day. It's also going to help prevent it from creasing, and some primers will also help the eyeshadow just show up a lot better on the skin. So I'm going to show you two different types of primers that I like to use, and then you could really choose for yourself what you want to use, because really it's just all personal preference. So the first primer that's honestly my personal favorite is the MAC Soft Ochre Paint Pot. So MAC Soft Ochre is my go-to just because it's a really nice like creamy yellow based cream, and I love using this all over my lid because it'll really cancel out all of the like veins on my eyes or discoloration, and it'll just create a really nice blank canvas for me to work on. But there are other eye primers as well. For example, this Smashbox 24-hour Phono Finish Shadow Primer. This primer has a little bit of a tint to it, but once you actually blend it out, there's not actually a tint. As you can see, it's actually completely clear. So these primers will really just ensure that your eyeshadow is going to stay on all day. It's not going to crease, but it's not going to completely blank out your eyes. So what I'm going to do, you can use your finger, but my nails are way too long for me to dip into the pot. So I'm going to use a brush, and you just want to take your primer of your choice and apply it all over your lid from the lash line all the way to the brow bone. Remember not to actually apply too much primer to your eye, because that'll just do the opposite effect and it'll actually make your eyeshadow crease. So you just want to apply a very thin layer. So after I apply my primer, whether it's a paint pot or just a clear primer, I always like to set it with a skin color powder. Because think of it this way, if you apply an eyeshadow like on a wet surface, it's obviously going to stick onto some areas and not to others, and you really don't want that because you want the eyeshadow to obviously blend as smoothly as possible. So I'm just going to go into my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, and I'm going to grab this shade right over here. It's just a creamy vanilla shade. I'm just going to put a very sheer amount. You don't want to like pack this on, you just want to simply set it. The eyeshadow palette that I'm going to be using today is the Violet Voss Pro palette. So the first step to an eyeshadow look is a transition shade. So transition shade is normally about like 1 or 2 shades darker than your skin tone. You can use something that's warmer, that's cooler, that's more neutral. It really doesn't matter. And again, it depends on the color scheme that you're going for. But this transition shade is basically really going to help all of the eyeshadows that you apply underneath it really blend. So something like this shade over here, actually called Transition, which is a perfect name for this shade, is great for a transition shade. Even this shade called Bestie, it would also work well as a transition shade. This is a little bit more neutral. And if you have a deeper skin tone, then something like this, Are You Kidding Me, would also work really well as a transition shade. Now you want to make sure that when you're applying color that you want to be really nice and diffuse, and you don't want it to look too defined, that you're using a brush that's very nice and fluffy. So something like this is the Sigma E40. So I'm just going to dip my brush into Bestie, and I'm going to start to very lightly apply that above the crease. And as you can see, I'm barely even touching my skin. And then when I don't have as much product on my brush, I will start to go in a little bit harder to really blend it out. To really blend everything out, you want to go either in windshield wiper motions like this or in small circular motions like this. I sort of like to alternate between the two. So the transition shade, as you can see, just adds like the smallest amount of shadow to your eye. It's really not that like crazy, but it really will make the biggest difference in the end. So now when I want to start to actually define my crease, I always like to use a color that's about 1 or 2 shades darker than the transition shade. So something like Are You Kidding Me would be a really great shade to go into next. So for crease work, I do like to use blending brushes that are just a little bit smaller than my fluffy blending brush. So if I would compare these two brushes side by side, you can clearly see that the big blending brush is much bigger and much fluffier. So if you have slightly hooded eyes like I do, you don't actually want to apply the color into your crease, because when you open up your eye, it's actually going to be hidden from that flap of skin that sort of covers that area. So you sort of want to keep your eyes open, and you want to place the color where you want your crease to be. So in my case, it would be right over here, and I'm going to apply the color in that area. If you don't have hooded eyes, you just have a defined crease, then you just want to simply apply the color into your defined crease. And if you have mono lids, then just like hooded eyes, you sort of just want to put the crease color where you want your crease to be, because makeup is all about illusion, and you could almost like change your whole eye shape with just playing around with the depths and the highlights with eyeshadows. So I'm gonna go into Are You Kidding Me, and I'm gonna keep my eye open, and I'm going to actually slightly tilt my brush slightly upwards, and I'm going to sweep the color back and forth. Because the brush is tilted, the bristles are sort of hitting my skin at the same time and blending into the transition shade. So in the end, it'll just make your job a lot easier. So we're just keeping this color just a little bit more precise and keeping it into the crease. And I'm also going to apply a little bit of this on the outer corner of my eye just to sort of tie everything together. Now, if you want to create more of a rounded shape, then you just want to sort of follow the natural shape of your eye. But if you want to create something that's a little bit more elongated, which is what I personally like to do, you could bring the eyeshadow out just a little bit farther in order to create a more elongated effect. Now, as you can see, this color is also pretty light. Like, this isn't giving me a lot of depth, which is sort of how I like to work when I do smoky eyes. I like to actually use as many eyeshadows as possible. I just find it gives a really nice blended look. So I'll go into like a light shade and then 2 shades darker and then like 2 shades darker and then the darkest. So it has a really nice gradient. You could always go back into your big fluffy brush and run over everything without any extra product on it to make sure that everything is blended very smoothly. So I'm actually gonna change my brush to this one over here. If I compare it to the last brush I just used, it's a little bit more tapered, so this is gonna be a lot more precise than using this brush. I like to use smaller brushes when I'm doing more precise work, like putting depth into the crease or on the outer corner. I just find that it creates a cleaner look so that the color's not sort of going everywhere. So I'm going to dip into brownie points, and remember, use a very small amount at a time, tap off the excess, and I'm going to start to really define my crease with this shade. So I'm keeping my eye open and just very lightly applying that shade into my crease. So now that I have that like initial depth there, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more product just to really solidify it. Another tip that I have for you guys is to actually hold your brush near the end and not so much near the bristles. When you hold your brush near the bristles, you'll actually have way too much control of the brush, and you're gonna create very, very, very harsh strokes with it. Rather than keeping your hands near the end of the brush, it's gonna be a little bit more flimsy, which is sort of what you want in order to create softer lines. So now, to create even more depth to the eye, you wanna grab a color that's, again, a few shades darker than the last one you just used. So in my case, I'm gonna be taking Teddy Bear, which is a very pretty, like plummy brown shade. Again, this one is also matte, and I'm gonna go into an even smaller brush. So this is a small little pencil brush. So I'm just going to pat this shade right on the outer corner. But make sure that when you're applying the darkest color that you're keeping it very concentrated in one area and that you're not bringing it all the way up. So the darkest color is going to be the most concentrated. After applying that color, I am going to go into my medium-sized blending brush and just blend along the shade just to make sure that it's blended nicely into the other shades. Now, when you blend eyeshadow, you may actually be wiping away some pigment. So the intensity of the eyeshadow may sort of wear down just a little bit. So don't be shy to go back in with your darker shade just to like re-intensify and make sure that it's nice and deep, and then just keep on blending and reapplying, blending and reapplying until you're happy with the finished result. So another tip that I have for you guys, you really do want to make sure that your eyeshadow does not surpass the outer corner of your eye. So let's just take an eyeshadow brush and put it up against your nostril and line it up with the outer corner towards the tail end of your brow. You do not want your eyeshadow to surpass this area. If you have eyeshadow that sort of just goes beyond this area, it will literally make your eyes look droopy. Most of us want a more lifted effect, so by keeping your eyeshadow above this line, it's really going to create that lifted effect. So now let's move on to the actual lid color. So for this specific look, I do want a lighter, brighter lid, but you could definitely use something that's a little bit deeper if you want more of like a deeper smoky eye. That's totally cool. But for the classic smoky eye, typically the lid is lighter than the crease. So for the lid, I'm going to grab Cool Beans, which is this really pretty like shimmery champagne shade, and I'm going to grab it on a flat shader brush, and I'm going to pat this on my lid space. So again, keeping my eyes open, I'm just going to apply the color just on that exposed lid area. This is probably going to be the simplest step in the eye look. Now, in order to really open up and brighten up the eyes, it is really nice to add a little bit of a pop of light right on the inner corner as well as on your brow bone. Now, that color could either be matte or it could be shimmery. It's really personal preference. So I'm gonna go into Crystal, which is the lightest shade in the palette, and I'm going to just pop that right on the inner corner of my eye. So I'm gonna put this right on the highest point of my brow, so where my arch is, and then sort of blend it towards the tail end, but do not go past the tail end of your brow. It's like the point of no return. Okay, so you could totally stop it right here, apply mascara, and like you're good to go, but I'm gonna take it again a step further and talk a little bit about putting eyeshadow on the lower lash line. Now, I feel like a lot of people are a little bit scared to put eyeshadow on the lower lash line because they feel like it'll make their eyes actually look smaller. Now, to a certain point, that is true. If you have really small eyes, by putting a really dark eyeshadow on your lower lash line, it will give the illusion of your eyes being smaller. However, even if your eyes are small, it is still really nice to apply a very, very small amount of a very like light shadowy color on the lower lash line, because that's actually going to make your eyes appear larger. And I'm going to show you. So I'm actually going to take the transition shade that we use, so Bestie, on my pencil brush, and I'm just going to sweep this on my lower lash line from the outer corner to the inner corner, connecting the eyeshadow right on the outer corner. So as you can see, when I look straight ahead, this eye that has just the small amount of shadow underneath my lower lash line just makes my eyes just look slightly larger, and it makes the eyeshadow look also look a little bit more put together. Now, if you do want to create just a little bit of smokiness on the lower lash line, then you could go into a small little shader brush. So this is the Morphe M508. So I'm going to go into brownie points with this tiny little brush, and I'm going to really push this color up against my lash line to create some depth there. And you can see that just creates a slightly smokier look, and you could even go in with some black or even the darkest color that we used in the crease, and even put that even closer to the lower lash line to make it even smokier. So for today, I'm gonna go in with just a simple black eyeliner. So I'm just gonna apply this in my waterline. Now I'm just going to curl my lashes with my eyelash curler and apply some mascara, and I'll be right back. So that is it for the finished eyeshadow tutorial. I really hope you guys enjoyed it and found it helpful. Don't forget to let me know in the comments what you thought, and also let me know what other like back to basics series you'd like to see from me. Give this video a big thumbs up, and of course subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you guys next time. I love you so much. So much. Mwah. Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing my June favorites, and just like last month, I'm going to be doing it in sort